Off today with the French lesson. We have a French lesson and then basically five different games, like viewer games. If anyone wants to send any material in, feel free. Hey, Electric Horse, you got here early. Cool. Yeah, but if anyone wants to send any games, we have open spots as early as May 12th, which is Wednesday. In the morning, and yeah, definitely feel free. If it's something that interests you, please send games in. We have plenty of spaces and plenty of spaces the next week. Good morning, Aphelion. How are you? How's it going? Just gonna pull up. So basically, I was just thinking we have sort of a general French lesson in mind, is what I was thinking of to start this game. And basically I was thinking, e4, e6, and I was thinking, kind of in the vein of what we were doing yesterday with e4, c4, Caro-Kann. I was thinking, what happens if black plays something, or what happens if first white plays something different than d4, and then second, what happens if black plays something other than d5? Those were the lines I was curious about. I guess similar to yesterday, I was kind of curious about looking at this opening. Basically this will end up giving you an open position relative to probably what a French player is expecting. d5, pawn takes, c takes, and queen takes d5 or knight f6. They're both playable. But I was sort of wondering in terms of this opening, like, what happens here and how is this objectively evaluated? I think basically this position will end up leading to relative equality for white. Similar to what we saw yesterday, where basically black was giving up the c-pawn and d-pawn for the e-pawn and the c-pawn. Yes, you do have an isolated pawn. So I would say that this is probably, this isn't an opening to, be played as a first idea. But I'm thinking, just since we were thinking that yesterday we went over this opening. We went over e4, c6, e4, c6, c4, d5, and we were looking at this line and what happens. What happens on the other side, and how is that evaluated? I mean, it might be worse. Here basically this is a fully playable line. The pan of attack plus 0.82 for white, so overall objectively fine. E4 is a little bit different because it actually speeds up black's development. I don't know. It may be worse. But I wanted to compare the two, just since we were in the, we were in the project of kind of learning those openings. So here, queen takes d5, knight c3, and white's still showing like a 0.3, 0.4 edge here. This is not a huge edge. This is probably smaller than the initiative edge, out of the French main line. But let's just compare this. So this is after white move 5. White's up 0.25. And if we look at like a mainline French, so say this line, d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, either bishop b4, winnower, or knight f6. Say this line. In this line, white's only up 0.25 or 0.32, right? So it's actually pretty close in terms of what's objectively better, from an eval perspective. They both have advantages and disadvantages, and they both offer, they both basically offer positives in terms of the position. But I'm thinking, like, in terms of, practical compensation of disrupting what your opponent's going to play, this e4, c4 French line, provides an opportunity to enter into a position where you can basically play chess against your opponent relatively early. Again, feel free to go with what, if you know French theory well, definitely go with that. I think objectively speaking, that's going to be significantly better for white. But I was just curious in terms of how to approach this. How this turns out, and basically how can you start a variation. Yeah, I mean these variations. I guess this is Burn variation, BURN. But yeah, good morning, Carrot. Yeah, some of these names on chess.com. I sort of wonder. I think if you come up with a name and it sticks, that's the main thing. We've created the Aphelion variation, and every time Aphelion sends in a game, we'll play through it. That's true. That's true, Electric Horse. I think that's right. So, this may be, I guess this is just to sort of illustrate. Here, white basically has the initiative, right? And it's plus 0.25, which to me seems not that surprising. I think that's about right for this for this opening, this plus 0.25. So knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes. White's, you know, up, has the initiative, developmental advantage, some better control in the center because the d4 pawn faces off favorably against the e6 pawn. But yeah, I guess I'm sort of surprised, you know, just since we were looking at the Panov attack. What is this? What is this? They call it the Steiner variation. Overall, I'm not going to make the argument that this is any better than, that this is any better than the mainline French. But here, you know, this just is basically fine. It's an isolated queen's pawn position for White. White has better center control, but worse worse pawn structure, isolated pawn on the d file. But that's probably fixable. And overall, I think White's development is one of the key parts of this position. Anyways, I wouldn't argue. Do you have to take back immediately, though? No. So you can play knight f6. Knight f6 is actually the main line here. Both of them are played. So knight f6 and queen takes d6. Knight f6, I think, is probably a little better for black. Yeah, so this basically leads to equality. Anyways, I wouldn't argue that it's a good opening to play. I just wanted to look at it in the context of a French Panov-like response. Since we looked at the Panov last night, we can look at the French similar position today. It's just a way to sidestep theory. You guys may be better with theory than I am generally, or relatively better with it than I am generally. So, these types of openings can be very helpful if you feel like your opponent knows the French and is extremely prepared for the French. If it's somebody you know personally or know well, this might be a good opening to play against them to kind of sidestep their well-prepared French theory. Anyways, it's an idea, and you're definitely not worse. Awesome. Hey, thank you very much for the raid, Matt Yop. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us, everybody. But yeah, knight c3 I think is the way to play, or basically is the way to play this opening. Now knight f3 and straightforward development. Anyways, I'm not going to make the argument that that's a good opening, but it is an opening and an approach to the French that goes along with it basically goes along with the Panov attack, similar to the Panov attack yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for the raid, Matt. Yep. Cool. Yeah. So I just wanted to say, Matt Yop or Coach is definitely in for this morning. I think Matt Yop might be. I'm not sure, but Coach is definitely in for this morning. This morning. So yeah, e4, e6, knight c3, d5. Yeah. Well, this is the mainline French. So the mainline French is what I play most generally. This is basically an opening line where White gets straightforward development. French is pretty solid for Black. You can transpose it potentially into semi-Slav if you want. You can play an early c5 if you want. But since we haven't looked at it yet on this stream, we can look at the French winnower. The winnower's interesting. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Basketball. I appreciate it. Thank you. But yeah, yep, knight d2 is also a move. This is, I think, called the Tarrasch. Yes, Tarrasch variation. But they should basically both transpose into the French exchange. Frequently, White will take in the Tarrasch variation, and then you're in the same theory. Knight c3, knight f6 is also playable. Bishop g5, d takes, knight takes, bishop e7, and here basically we can spend. I think he's recommended it before, but the Tarrasch French is good. It transposes, but good. Yeah. So, I guess I want to take a big picture approach to the French, too. I wanted to show you that Panov-like thing, mostly just for my own curiosity, but basically the concept, and I'm drawing this from kind of classic theory, and a great book, which I would recommend to you guys, called The Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Reuben Fine. One of the really good things about this book is it sort of teaches you the main concepts between each of the chess openings. And in the French, they basically give an analysis of about six different pawn structures that can occur out of the French. But yeah, Tarrasch. I should enunciate it better. You're right. But yeah. Uh, I would say advanced variation isn't. I guess I'm using this not in terms of looking at the, I'm looking more at the pawn structure and not the move order here. This move order is reached basically by, it can be reached like this. This is an acceptable line. But basically what ends up happening in many French lines is you end up I wasn't focusing on the move order electric horse. Good question, though. I was thinking more about this d4, e5 pawn structure, however you reach it in the French. There's many mainline French lines that result in this pawn structure as well. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Prince. Thanks for joining the stream. But yeah, so basically, whether or not white can maintain this pawn structure is a key determination in how good the French is. Basically, in the French opening, if the d4, e5 pawn structure can be maintained by white, then then basically that's going to be favorable for white, usually throughout the whole game. Black has two main shots to try to undermine the center, c5 and f6, and the goal for white is to either deal with these undermining moves or play them in such a way that the pawns can be replaced. So in that case, it would be c3 defending d4, or f4 defending e5. We can look at the Tarrasch variation. But yeah, the Tarrasch variation does have this benefit that Electric Horse is talking about, which is on this undermining move c5, you can always respond c3 and basically maintain this pawn structure more easily. With the knight on c3, there's all sorts of crazy, basically, the winnower doesn't really have them as much, but basically the French moves here. So say here, here, queen takes here. This is a fairly main French line. In this case, you can potentially free this c3 pawn as well out of the mainline French. I guess this is called the mainline Alapin variation, but basically the idea here is, you freed this knight on b5. You have the choice of retreating it either via knight a3 or c3. Let's just look at what normally happens, but usually c3 is played here, and you get that same pawn structure that you're recommending out of the Tarrasch line. But the main idea that I'm drawing from Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Fine is basically, the value of White's game here is dependent on how well he can, basically how well he can maintain d4 and e5 as a general policy. c5 can be played, f6 can be played, but f4 can be played, and c3 can be played in response. So, White will have the ability to try to maintain this pawn structure, and if he does, the positions tend to be good for him. If Black manages to disrupt this pawn structure by removing either one or both of the pawns, that tends to be either equal or better for Black. That's the main concept there between behind the chess openings. Or the French is a chess opening. So the Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Fine talks about this. It gives like a list of like, I should get the picture just to show on the stream, but basically it's a picture of like 6 different pawn structures that can emerge out of the French. And basically however well this d4, e5 can be maintained by White is usually a pretty good indicator of both White's center control and White's overall standing in the game. So overall, interesting stuff. f4, c3, and basically White has definitely opportunities to hold on to this pawn structure here. Black can basically create problems early with things like here, say a knight f3, or say e5 here, e5, knight f d7, knight f3, c5. With an early c5 here, before c3 has the opportunity to be played, White doesn't really have the same ability to play c3 and replace the pawn on d4 with another pawn. So I just wanted to focus on the biggest view here. Maintaining these pawns in the French center is good for White. Generally, it gives him, basically you can see there's space advantage, center advantage for White. White has 2 pawns in the center, and Black has 1 pawn in the center, and it's pretty overwhelmingly controlled by White. This diagonal is good as well in that pawn structure. But usually you want to work pretty hard to try to maintain that pawn structure if you can as White. There are many lines in which you literally can't maintain it, but as a general goal, if you have the option to maintain the d4, e5 pawn structure in the French, you want to try to do that. I mean, I wouldn't do it at the expense of a piece, or I wouldn't go it's not an absolute, but in general, if you manage to maintain that pawn structure without sacrificing too much, you can really play, set yourself up for a good position as white. If f6, you can play pawn takes f6. That disrupts the pawn structure, or you can play f4. It depends on the situation. Sometimes there are tactical reasons to play pawn takes f6, especially after the king has castled. But yeah, f4 and pawn takes e5, fx e5 is probably, what you want to do in the theme of this opening. In practice, it's a little bit more complicated. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I hope those are interesting. So I think in general, basically looking at the Steiner variation versus the Panov attack. The Panov attack holds better as a general plan. The Steiner, it depends on the situation. The situations that I'm actually referring to are situations in which black will have to retake with the g-pawn. You still don't want to take, you still don't want to disrupt e5. Like, basically, as a general baseline policy, don't play e takes f6. I'm talking about, like, specific tactical situations in which you can, in which it advances an attacking situation for white to play pawn takes f6. Like, if you have something along the lines of, like, g4, h4 already played, then e takes f6 becomes a much more reasonable move. Too early, and it disrupts that pawn structure that's so valuable that I'm sort of talking about. So I wouldn't take it as an absolute, but I would keep it in mind, I would keep in mind both things. Maintaining d4 and e5 is almost always good for white, and it's worth, working to maintain that pawn structure and replace pawns that are taken with the c and f pawns. But at the same time, if you have an opportunity to execute tactically on the king side, you can occasionally play pawn takes f6. I realize those two things are kind of conflicting, but in chess, there's a lot of situationally specific things that can be, more. I mean, basically, in conflict with print. There's a time to do practical things and a time to do principled things in chess, and the principled thing there is the main theme of the opening, but the practical thing can also come up and be useful in your games. It is. Yeah, it is. No, it's true. And the ideas behind the chess openings, has some great... hey, thank you very much for the follow, Extincture. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining the stream. So yeah, chess is very hard to generalize easily. And I think that ideas behind the chess openings by Fine, which is a super classic book, basically does a sort of good job of explaining this. Like, it says that these are the ideas, not the rules of the chess opening. Like, it's basically, the ideas are a very good general guideline, and it's good to understand conceptually why the ideas are there. But at the same time, it's always about practice as opposed to basically it's basically about compromise between what you do in practice and what you do in principle on this topic. But anyways, very interesting, and yeah, thank you very much for the questions, Electric. It's actually super helpful. Anyway, everyone should feel free to ask questions, and yeah, so Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Ruben Fine, great classic book. It reads very easily relative to most chess books. Basically, it has a lot of pictures. It doesn't really go through the lines that deeply. I mean, maybe it'll go through 1 or 2 lines per variation. But it really explains the concept. You can basically read that book front to back without ever having to, like, set up a chessboard almost. And reading it front to back in that way, you will learn a lot about how to, about how to play openings and about the basic concepts in these openings. Then you can come up with, your own plans, and you can memorize lines, and you can look at actual specific lines. But that book reads extremely easily. It may be common domain, so you might be able to find it on the internet. But I'm not sure about that. It's a very old book. It's probably 75 years old or more. So yeah, on to the first game. Thank you very much for the questions, Electric Horse, and everybody always feel free to ask questions. Like, it's super helpful in terms of explaining where we, basically what we can do, and like it really helps focus the analysis for people to ask questions. So always feel free. Ideas behind the chess openings, unless I'm getting it wrong. Let me make sure. I'm just looking it up on my phone right now. It's I think it's Ideas Behind the Chess Openings. Yeah, The Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Ruben Fine. Really a classic, and easy to read. Is one of the things that's super helpful. Yep, that's the one. But yeah, I like that one a lot. It just gives very practical understandings of the openings. It doesn't really like go into the lines too deeply, but it does a great illustration of the French. I think to be completely honest, PDF. I don't want to speak because I have a hard copy version of it, but I think it might be public domain, which is always good if you're looking for things to study from. Yeah. So here, basically, we have our first game. This is sent to us by a Chessbra fan, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's about getting a mix of, content. In terms of, yeah, no, it's Aphelion. It's super helpful for that. I think it's a really good book on that topic. You really don't have to have a chessboard with you or that kind of thing. So anyways, it's, basically, in terms of things you can do to improve, the first step that I would say is basically tactics training comes above all other things until you're about an expert. If you do 2 hours of tactics training a day on any of the resources that I usually talk about, so like Chess Tempo, Chess.com Puzzle Battle, Puzzle Rush, or CT-ART, or Lichess's free tactics thing, whatever tactics trainer you want. I strongly advocate doing it for an hour or two a day. That will show you the quickest returns on your time spent studying. It really, really helps. There's just no, it may not be identifiable tomorrow, but if you do it for like 2 or 3 months for an hour a day, you're going to be, I think that will be very good for you as someone who's below, expert or master level. It's not something anyone can teach. It's not something that anyone can, push. It's not something that people can guide you that much. It's just homework that you have to do if you want to improve significantly. Strongly recommend it. Strongly recommend spending a lot of time on it. And I think it'll provide very efficient returns in terms of improving at chess. Okay. So that, and then once you're a little bit, and then once you've basically got good tactical background, then you can go back and learn the concepts. Look at things like Games by Bobby Fischer, that kind of stuff. But the Ideas Behind the Chess Openings is a good book for people at class level still. You don't have to have you don't really have to have a book or a chessboard with you, and you don't really have to disrupt anything. I read it a few times. Used to write it going to work on the train. I used to have it PDF version on my phone. And basically I could just look at my phone and not have to have a chessboard in front of me, but study chess and understand the openings better. It was actually very helpful. This is Chessbra Fan's game. It's the Sicilian Open. Okay, cool. Sicilian Open with d6. Bishop d7 seems a little bit early here. I don't think that's the main move. The main move here is knight f6. I've also seen e6 a bunch. Bishop d7 is a little bit offbeat, but I'm sure fine. I'm sure this isn't going to cause black any problems. It's probably it's a little bit it depends, Electric. I guess I would say I've done it as an exercise where I've gone through I've gone through like an openings book, trying to do it intentionally without having a board in front of me, and I can still do it. I can't do it perfectly, but I can usually get about 10 moves into an opening. That I can do. But anyways, it's just a practice thing. I've seen 1900s who can do full blindfold chess. I'm not particularly good at it, and I don't know how really directly relevant it is to playing a chess game. Like, I don't know if it's a skill that helps like an extremely large amount. But yeah, basically, I think that that ideas behind the chess, or basically ideas behind the chess openings, is something that I think most people, can get something out of even without a chessboard in front of them, and that's really the main goal. Anyways, knight c3, bishop d7, bishop c4 is a line here. Bishop c4 is not a bad move. It's in this opening book, but the one guideline that I want to give to do with bishop to c4, basically with bishop to c4, what you can do is, basically bishop to c4 can be undermined fairly easily with e6. If bishop to c4 is followed by e6, then it doesn't really justify itself on this diagonal. In terms of ways to improve, what other moves would be good here? I do think developing the light-squared bishop is a good idea. The opening book is proposing bishop b5. Bishop c4 seems a little bit too easily countered. I might play like bishop e3 and then wait for e5 to be played, then play like knight b3 and then play bishop to c4. That's probably what I would go with there. But it's really up to, it's a little bit about personal taste too. The one thing I will say is, just as a general principle, bishop c6 can run into e6 and d5 relatively easily in run into e6, d5 relatively easily in this Sicilian opening. Bishop c4 tends to be better after e5 has been played. Yes, definitely. Lots of lines. Yes, that's a full opening theory. So say e5 here, knight b5, or actually it usually comes earlier. Knight f3, knight f6, or even e5 here. Really, this is playable. I think this is called Kalashnikov Sicilian. I get sort of not so awesome with the names sometimes, but Kalashnikov Sicilian, basically open Sicilian with d6, then a very early e5. But yes, there are many openings where white will play knight to b5. This is an example of one of them. In these openings, you generally can play knight d5. Sometimes you have maneuverings like knight d5, c4, bishop to e3. But yeah, there's a lot of how do you, after a6 and knight a3, how do you deal with b5? Usually by playing, it depends on whether you have knights on c3 and a3. But yeah, let's play through to one of these. So say e5, knight b5, a6 is a fully formed line, b5. Then here, so in this position, what you're referring to, Electric Horse, is you can play knight d5 here. And here, basically, this pawn can't fork the knight on b4 anymore, so you just move it to c4. This is just one specific, but yeah, that's true. Or the Tarrasch is used for multiple lines in the Sicilian. But yeah, a6 and knight a3. This, you basically have to move your knights. Here, the overwhelming main line is knight d5. c4 is an idea. Knight d4, bishop b3. Everything's pretty much good here. The b5 came in as a threat, but the c4 and the bishop holds it off pretty well. White begins to get an advantage on the queen side here, and that's really not something that black wants, because it's not like black's going to be able to attack on the king side. C takes. Overall, pretty much good for white. Anyways, going back, this d6, bishop d7. This tends to be fairly good for, basically this tends to be fairly good for white. Bishop d7 is somewhat of an offbeat move. White follows up with bishop c4, and basically this is pretty good for white, I guess. This is, basically a position in which white has center control and, better development. Black's dark squared bishop's probably going to have some problems developing. I don't think d5's ever going to be playable. So maybe castles, maybe bishop e3, and overall, generally just good stuff for white. Yeah, we can look at the eval just for a second. I'm trying to steer away from using the eval as much. But yeah, white's got a fine position here, center control, good development. no issues. White's got a plus 0.6 advantage. Okay, castles, and then g6, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, bishop g5, and basically here white's got a white's got a solid position. It's these pieces are well developed. This bishop's not particularly well developed. It's black to move here, but I don't think that knight takes is playable here. So like knight takes. Oh wait, yeah. So it's not like this knight can take this pawn, right? Because on knight takes, bishop takes, queen to d4. So yeah, that's just a potential way that this can evolve. But anyways, going through this game, going back to the game's main lines, bishop c4 early, g6. Black's sort of going to transpose it into a dragon-like thing where it's got g6 played. Bishop e3, and this is all relatively mainline stuff. Here white plays f4, and I think that f4 is probably premature here. You probably want to play f3. I think f3 is better. The issue with f4 is that it definitely allows knight to g4. I don't know if that's the best line or not. But basically will allow black some counterplay on the g4 square. I would play knight g4, and actually the engine confirms knight g4 is the best move. This pushes the bishop back to c1, or basically forces knight takes c6 first, and then forces the bishop back to c1, right? So knight takes c6, bishop b takes c6, bishop d4. And overall, it's about equality, which is not really what white wanted, given that white was up 0.6 pawns. But here, knight takes c6 over f4, and f4 is just a little bit premature. f3 I think is good. There's other moves here that you can use to start to put pressure on black. h3 is good here. h3 and then f4 seems like a plan if you want to play f4. So h3 first, so the g4 square is occupied. Hey, good morning, Anch. Thanks very much for joining the stream. Thank you. Thanks for being here. But yeah, I would say h3 here, and f4 is a much more playable move. But in terms of ideas here, h3, castles, bishop b3, queen a5. White's basically pretty. White's basically pretty solid here. I think ideas for white, big picture, probably going to be starting to attack on the king side. Another thing that I draw from and generalize with from ideas behind the chess openings is basically in the Sicilian, white attacks on the king side and black attacks on the queen side, and the longer the game goes on, the more likely it is to be a black victory. That is generally true. So in terms of forming plans in the Sicilian, the most common and usually safe ones are just straight up attacks on the king side. You can do that with either castling king side or castling queen side, but you basically start to launch attacks on the king side, and that ends up being the best strategic play in the Sicilian. Anyways, f4 was early. Yeah, queen d2 is good. Queen d2, bishop h6 is definitely something that you can do. That fits into a lot of Sicilian attacks. You can go into queen h4, bishop h6 as well. So queen e1, and then queen h4, and then bishop h6. That comes up in some Sicilian lines. But yeah, queen d2 and bishop h6 can definitely be a useful tactic. It trades off that bishop. Basically, after trading off those bishops, the dark squares for the for the black king side are relatively weak. So f4 is f4 is early, I would say. h3 should probably come before f4. With f4, knight g4 becomes vulnerable. The engine is suggesting it, but anyways, it transposes into h3 f4, so it's about the same outcome. And here's that queen e1 move that I was talking about. There's a lot of queen e1 moves in the Sicilian. The engine doesn't seem to love this one, but I think queen e1 in the Sicilian is generally pretty solid. There's a lot of stuff you can do to try to launch a king side attack. You can play queen e1, queen h4, f5, trades on g6. and generally put pressure over on the king side, and good things will happen for white. But yeah, the opening theory book is suggesting bishop to b3. Keeping this bishop on this diagonal focused on f7. Black hasn't played e6, partially I think because this bishop is on d7 and e6 sort of invalidates its mobility. Not like it was going to go to e6 anyways, but e6 seems to be being held back by black here. E6 really shortens the amount of strength that this bishop has on this diagonal. With e6 being played, basically the only two squares are this one and that one. But if without e6 being played, the bishop's attacking right on the king on g8. Anyways, black plays rook c8. That makes sense. It puts the rook on a semi-open file. Queen f3, b5, a3, queen c7. And overall here, I think everyone's sort of playing intuitive moves. White's being a little bit slow in terms of advancing an attack on the king side. I would say that white could comfortably start attacking here. I would play like g4, f5, pawn takes g6 maybe, h4, but basically just start pawn storming on the king side, and I think that should play out well for white. Pawn storms in the Sicilian, I have a specific pawn storms in the Sicilian lecture coming up tonight. It's going to be a special slot. But yeah, I would say g4. G4 should be part of a bigger attack. Yeah, I mean, you could probably even do it earlier. White can really kind of go all in on this this kingside attack if he wants. G4 doesn't significantly weaken white's position. Yeah, no, it's true. But the thing about it is basically, black's kingside is relatively closed, so the things that make g4 difficult would be like threats along the g file. In the Sicilian, the main threats are coming along this diagonal, this b6, g1 diagonal, and in situations where the black bishop is fianchettoed, they come in via this diagonal too. And neither of those is the problematic one for g4. The g4 diagonal becomes, or an open g file becomes the weakest if there's pieces or like queens or rooks on the g file, and that's not really something that happens in the Sicilian. So these kingside attacks with white having already castled kingside, are actually more playable in the Sicilian than they are in many openings. That said, you can still castle queenside, and castling queenside, you basically have a, you have strong attack. You can launch those strong attacks with better king safety, but your king safety is not as compromised in the Sicilian with moves like h4, g4, f4, as it is in other openings. Just because the rook and queen can't really get over to the g file very easily, specifically because of the pawn on g6. Hey, welcome, Darkslide. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Yeah, that makes sense too, Electric Horse, and you probably do have better king safety in that way. So castling queenside is good, and then castling kingside and attacking on the kingside. Either way, the main plan in the Sicilian is for white to castle, or white to start attacking aggressively on the king side, and white should be able to do that. Yeah, no, you can get a lot of good wins for sure. But it's the main plan. I mean, the ideas behind the chess openings talks about it at length, but the main plan for white in the Sicilian is an early attack on the king side. So I think white's on his way to doing this. F5 makes sense. The engine's saying it's a bit early. I'd play like knight d2 maybe. But f5 looks pretty good. As a general, thematically f5 looks good. Tactically it seems like it has a problem. But thematically f5, g4 seem to be the right way to play this. In terms of what the engine is suggesting, knight f3, that seems pretty quiet. I would assume that with knight f3, g4 is coming up soon, but... Let's see what knight f3 plan is. Knight f3, queen 7, d1. Okay, queen h4. It's going to be f5 and g4 coming, like this kind of stuff. The engine has a the engine has some interesting attacks. I mean, I think the engines are basically the engines I think are the most objectively correct way to play, but they do come up with some very inhuman feeling ideas. So g4 I think is what I would play. G4, queen h5. But yeah, sounds good. G4, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight f6. And now queen h5 and threats on h7. Seem right to me. So anyways, I think that should be pretty good. Let's go back to actual game. Actual game comes with a super early f5. I sort of like this. I think that white needs to start this attack at some point. This probably isn't the soundest way to do it, but I agree with the general principle there. b4, and then I would play knight to e2 here. Knight to a4 sort of takes the knight and puts it in positions that aren't thematically appropriate. Like, basically, if you understand the basics, so this is kind of an important concept in terms of understanding openings. If you understand this opening concept here, you play knight e2 and then knight f4 probably. You don't play the knight to the side where there's nothing going on for white. White wants to mobilize more force to attack the king side, and the way that you would do that would be like knight e2, knight f4, and generally this would be good for white. Why does the engine like b4? Mainly spatial advantage. The rook is supporting this open c file, so that's helpful. Basically, space advantage and trying to come up with a counterattack. Basically, the ideas are, black is trying to come up with a queenside attack of some kind to counter white's kingside attack. That's basically the larger point of the Sicilian. But yeah, with b4, knight e2, and I think things are definitely improving on the basically things are moving towards the king side for white and moving towards the queen side for black. I think white's going to get the better of it, but basically this open file is helpful for black. This threat on b2 and a1 is helpful for black, and if black can play things like a5, a4, that's really going to start to become some tactical pressure. Potentially winning the bishop, or potentially putting pressure on the b2 pawn with this g7 diagonal open on a1. That I think should be good for that I think is best option for black. The issue is that it's a lot slower and it's a lot less deadly. Like when white attacks on the king side, he's basically attacking the king. When black is attacking the queen side, he's like attacking the pawn structure and the rook. So both in terms of severity and like speed, black has attacks on the queen side, is going to like pick up more space on the queen side, but is going to end up basically having a queen side attack countering white's king side attack over here. Anyways, I would move knight e2 as opposed to knight a4. Knight e2 is the direction, but b4 is also good, and I guess maybe this is the more direct tactical reason. This knight is defending this pawn here on e4, so anywhere after b4, this e4 pawn is hanging. So I don't know how important that is. White can basically play pawn takes g6, and then pawn takes g6, and then knight f4, and then get a lot of pressure on this g6 square. So I'm not sure how. Again, this is not the tactical way to do it. You trade off the knight on c6 first, but you're going to end up with pressure on the king side here. So f5 hangs e4 is the main reason why things are preferred to f5. From an attacking and thematic perspective, it makes sense, but I think that white probably needs to come up with a way to defend e4 first. Knight f3, the engine move doesn't do it. Knight takes c6 might. Maybe. I'm wondering how white's supposed to tactically defend e4 here. Yeah, no, this tactic is definitely worth paying attention to. Bishop to f2 could work, I think. b4 and then knight to d5 maybe. It's difficult to calculate it super quickly, but in any case, the main theme of this game is to play f5 and start attacking on the king side. I think that's the best idea for white going forward. f5 starts this attack, but it runs into the tactical shortcoming this e4 is falling. So knight ce2, then maybe knight takes e4, then I would play queen h4 here. Got to be careful with tactics though. Knight takes c6. bishop takes c6 probably is better than either pawn takes or knight f4. It's tricky. It's tricky. And this is a complicated tactical position. Hard to do quickly. So yeah, in terms of advancing the situation, I guess I would say, f5 thematically makes sense. Is queen takes b4 a move? Not really. I would say queen takes b4. I mean, I don't see it ever. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be worth winning that pawn, to be completely honest, for white. Thematically, it doesn't fit in with the rest of the game. Basically, if you put attacks on this king, you do it with all the pieces: knight d5, knight f5, bishop h6, queen h4. The attack is generally going to be focused on this king. Spending white's time basically, picking up a pawn here, I think is kind of a marginal choice. Knight ce2, it's continuing the attack on the king side is probably a good idea. Yeah, here's what I would advise, Extincture. I think knowing notation is not necessarily that good an idea. You guys are raising a really interesting point, which I think is a really helpful thing that you're doing. I think it's probably might be a good idea to have like a beginner class and then a non-beginner class. I wouldn't have thought of it unless you guys said something, but since you brought it up, I actually do think it might be really helpful to have everyone's at a different place with their chess development, but since you guys are bringing up the topic, I do think it might be helpful to go over the basics, like knowing notation. And I guess I would say notation is probably, notation's not as important as learning the underlying principles of the game. But I really appreciate you guys, bringing up the topic, because it is a good point. I probably should, have something that fits into a more beginner type section. We're all at different stages, and we're all sort of learning different things. Different things are useful to different people, but I really want to thank you guys. I really want to thank, I was talking to a few friends, and I think that your idea of moving into the the more beginner free lesson space, you're really giving me a good idea of focus here. So I appreciate that, and I think both of those ideas are good. Maybe a more advanced and a more beginner class. I think that's an excellent idea. I really appreciate it, and I wouldn't have thought of it unless you started saying something. But it really is helpful in terms of you guys bringing that up. So thank you very much, Electric Horse. Thank you guys very much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And yeah, Extincture, here's what I would do from your rating. I guess I would say, what you should do, Extincture, is you should go on to chesstempo.com is a really good site. They have tactical puzzles, and they'll really help you see the board better. There's also one, I think it's called the Chess Tactics Workbook. This is a really good beginner book. This is the one that I know well. This book here was really helpful in terms of learning. This Chess Tactics Workbook, I'm not trying to place a product. I don't know anything about this person or anything about this book, but this one was really helpful in terms of beginner tactics. This is the classic that I know. Sure. Yeah, no, but anyways, you raise a really good point, guys. I do think that it would be helpful to set up a beginner course and a more advanced course. The real point here is to try to make chess lessons free. Chess lessons will be free, and it's basically one of these things, like, if you can get free chess lessons or paid chess lessons, you would definitely want to get free chess lessons. And since we can give free chess lessons, that's what everyone should have. My goal is really just to be accessible here and to try to make chess lessons free for everyone. And I recognize that sets up different needs for different groups of people. So you make a really good point about beginning chess, and I think I'll come up with a good solution for the streams on that soon. But you're really adding something very helpful here, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Thanks. Yeah. And yeah, feel free to join the Discord server. Yeah, Chess Tempo is great. And also, if anyone has like good suggestions in the in the chat or anything, feel free to just say something. But do I consider learning notation important? Not as important as learning how to play effectively. Notation is one of those things I feel like you just sort of gradually learn by diffusion. You could spend a day or two like learning how to do it, and that might help, when you're reading chess books and that kind of thing. But no one ever taught me how to do it, to be honest. So I just sort of learned chess notation by experience. But it might be efficient to learn how to do it. Interesting. Yeah, Extincture, I think there's great opportunities for you to improve. The main thing I would say is just tactics. This chess tactics workbook that I'm showing is a great one, and you can find other ones that are kind of similar to this, at various levels. This is a good beginner workbook. The important thing I guess I would say is just to make sure that it's free, or as close to free as it possibly can be. Yeah, Chess Tactics Workbook is a good idea. Cool. Interesting. I don't know specifically what, I guess I don't know specifically what you're referring to, Extincture, but, learning chess notation is something that I think you, like, let's just figure it out. Learning chess notation. I think that something just really general, stuff like this, this type of thing will be very helpful in terms of learning how to do chess. Yeah. It's funny. But yeah, I think really this is good notation, and keep this in mind. Anyways, on to the next thing. Let's go back to the game that we were looking at. This is from Chessbra Fan. Places where I think you can improve here. I think you played a pretty good game in general. F5 was a little bit early, and the issue was on B4 it hangs this E4 pawn. And I guess I would say ideas. The one piece of advice. Extincture. And again, I'm just thinking just because people are bringing stuff up. Don't pay for anything. Okay, Extincture, I would say don't pay, maybe pay for a book for $15, but do not pay for things when you're learning chess. Like, you don't have to, don't do it. There's many resources available online. There's many resources available to people who are willing to do the research independently. Do not pay for lessons, which are frequently very expensive. Do not pay for classes. If you need classes, either feel free to come here or look up, chess lessons for beginners on YouTube. But the main point is do not pay for anything. I wouldn't have thought of it unless people were saying something, but that is the main, that is the main takeaway as someone who's learning chess, Extincture. So thank you very much for saying something. But I really want to make sure that resources are free and available to everyone. And I think the main goal of that is you will learn just as well learning off of learning either by yourself through tactical training, or if you just have questions related to chess, you can usually Google them and get relatively good answers to them on Google. You really don't have to pay for it, and I don't think you should pay for it out of principle. So that said, this game is sent in by Chessbra, and I wanted to get back to it. I wouldn't have thought of it, but I just I appreciate you guys bringing things up, and every time you bring things up, I think of new things. So really appreciate it, and thank you very much for thank you very much for asking the question, Extincture. Cool. Awesome. Going on with this, Chessbra's game is interesting. In terms of improvements, I'm serious. There's many free resources out there. Please go with those. I really recommend it. I don't want to make any money doing this, and I think chess should be fun, so don't spend any money on anything you don't have to. So h3 paired with f4 is kind of interesting, but I think you also raise a good point. I'm going to move into more beginner lessons. That's a really good idea, Extincture. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Okay. F5 versus B4. B4, the issue here is F5 is a good thematic move which exposes an attack to the king side. But on that issue, basically you're forced to move off of the E4 square. Knight to D5 I think is a good idea. Knight to E2 I think is a good idea. But the E4 pawn is sort of hung here, so you might as well move it. I would say knight a4 is not the right way to do it. The main idea in the Sicilian is you're attacking on the king side, and feel free to play queen to h4. Queen to h4 is good, continues your attack, and also indirectly threatens the knight, which is now taken on e4. Knight takes e4, queen to h4, now you have this threat. There might be good tactical responses. G takes h5 looks kind of interesting. But overall here, I think white's in a pretty good place. Yeah, no. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Extincture. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate you being here. And my reminder is stick to free chess resources. Really a very strong recommendation from me. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to help with them. Feel free to pose them in the chat or to come back to the stream. Thanks a lot for being here, Extincture. Yeah, so I would move your knight to c2, and this pressure that you put on the king side I think is a good idea. B4, G knight to E2, and I think basically here, White's going to try to advance his attack. He's down a little. I guess there's a good tactical response here. Oh, this is a sideline. Let's go back to the main line. Here, knight C E2. And White's attacking on the G6 square. Pressure on F7. And White's good. Maybe knight to D3, knight to E4. Overall, I think basically White's in a pretty good place. In terms of improving the situation, what can you do? Knight's taking e4, so black's going to be up by a bit. Queen h4, knight f6, knight g5. Yet now you have this rook takes f6 possibility. I guess on rook takes f6, the other rook would take f6. And knight to c5 actually makes sense as an idea. This is a good tactical idea. Rook takes f6 threatens checkmate, which is a great tactic. Rook takes f6, queen takes h7, awesome. And knight to h5 allows this f7 pawn to be taken, which you do. And overall, yeah, I think this is really just a pretty well played attack for white. I want to see kind of where there was an improvement. Maybe bishop to e3. Yeah, probably bishop to e3. But yeah, interesting situation. This attack, so this is a good demonstration of an attack that got very effective very quickly for white. Knight f6, knight to g5, rook takes f6 is good. Knight to c5 threatens rook takes f6 again, so good tactic. And then you get this open, basically position for attack on h4. So I would go with maybe rook f5, but overall here white is in a pretty solid general place. Where would I? Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. This attack should be convertible to a win. I want to find the exact situation. Bishop takes, king h8. And then you have mate in 4, so that should do it. So you've done a great job. Extincture, or sorry, you've done a great job, Chessbra fan. But what I would do here is play something along the lines of g4. But bishop takes g6 is even better. This is basically this is a mate in 4. You've played tactically well to break open the king side. I think knight c5 was a real strong move, really good thinking, because basically it blocks off this rook. The issue is you want to play rook takes f6 and then play queen h7, this does that effectively. So now you can play rook takes f6 and play queen h7, and then get pressure on f7 here. Bishop takes g6 turns this into a mate in 4, and overall, I think this this was a missed mate in 4, right? You played bishop takes g6, you got the first move right, and now it's mate in 2. Queen e4, tough one to see, but there. Bishop f5, queen takes f5, and black is mated. So queen e4, queen e4, bishop f5, queen takes f5. Good work. Places to improve in this game. The g4 was exposed here. Play h3 before f4. h3 before f4 here. Queen e1 was fine. Thematically, I think you're playing relatively well. And yeah, I really like this tactic. You basically walk this into a win. With queen e4, you have the mate. So just in terms of playing this game, I think you got great tactics off. I think basically, I would try to improve tactically. Seeing this mate in 2 is going to win you this game. If you can see queen e4, bishop f5, queen takes f5, you win. Being really good with your mate in 2s is important. Viewing this position as its own thing, and looking for a tactical win. Queen e4, bishop f5, queen takes f5, and basically, this this is an attack on this king. So yeah, I strongly recommend that. Otherwise, knight g4 in an open Sicilian can be dangerous. If knight g4 can be played, this can provide a lot of an attack on your king and your king side. So knight to, basically knight takes c6 and threats of knight to g4. Here, h3 should come before f4. h3 and you're good. Maybe queen d2. I don't know. It's up to you. But yeah, I would play h3 and f4 as opposed to just f4 in isolation. F4 in isolation allows knight to g4, and then you're in some difficulties. So overall, yeah, thank you very much for sending this game, Chessbra. Sorry to take so long on it, but yeah, really good questions really good questions by Electric Horse. Please keep them coming, and please keep sending the games. They're very interesting. I really enjoy you guys sending these games in. I hope the analysis is somewhat helpful, and yeah, good work. Thank you very much for sending the game. Thank you very much for watching on the stream. Thanks, Chessbra fan. Awesome. Cool. On to the next one. Cool. So this is Kathleen's game. Here. Kathleen plays the Caro-Kann, which is great. C takes basically. White plays early knight f3. This isn't the mainline Caro-Kann. This is the exchange variation with c takes d5. And overall, I think this ends up being fairly good for. I think this is fairly good for black. I mean, basically, it makes this bishop in a much better position going forward. So pawn takes d5, knight c6, bishop f5, e6, and okay, cool. Oh yeah, I didn't see Ansh's here. Yeah, no, sorry. I saw Kathleen's name, and I think Kathleen sent this one. But yeah, thank you very much for sending it. And here, pawn takes, d4, knight f6, bishop g4, and basically black, black is doing fairly well. This is the white has the normal Caro-Kann type initiative, but ideas like bishop g4, knight c6, and basically, black's doing fine. The eval already shifts to black here. Engine doesn't like bishop to g5 for some reason. But yeah, this is right. I mean, an issue in the French is, the light squared black bishop's development. You play bishop g4 here, and it's good. You can play e6, knight c6, And overall, I think this ends up playing out pretty well for black. In terms of ways that white can improve this, what are the improvements in this line? It's not bad, but good question. So why is bishop h5 a mistake for black? G4 gives white a big spatial advantage. One of the main problems with playing h3 g4 in a general sense is it ends up putting pressure on so h3 g4, and then this bishop has to go back to g6. Here, white hasn't committed fully enough to castling kingside. One of the main reasons why h3 and g4 tend to be bad for white is because white is castling kingside and his king safety suffers. Here, this is basically fine for white. This is like a space advantage, and it gives the bishop potentially the ability to develop to g2. Bishop to b5 is an idea. Bishop to g2 is probably a good, I don't know if the best development is to d3 or to g2, but this spatial advantage causes no king safety issues for white. So in the same way that bishop h5, can sometimes be, basically bishop g4 and bishop h5 can sometimes be strong for, can sometimes be strong for black when, if the king is castled kingside. Here it just doesn't cause as many threats. G4, bishop g6, and basically, knight c6, knight to b6 are kind of black's best strategies. But knight e5 clears that bishop off the board entirely. So this basically secures the trade of this bishop for this knight, if that's the goal. But I think that basically this position should end up being favorable for favorable for white. So yeah, e4, c6, knight f3, d5, pawn takes, d4, knight f6. Equality, fine game. I think as white here, I might play c4. This sort of transposes into some type of, I forget what it's called. It has a specific name to it. It looks a little bit like the French exchange Monte Carlo attack, but it's probably not as strong. Knight c3 going in front of the c4 pawn, or c4 and then knight c3 behind it. Maybe. But bishop to d3, bishop to e3, white's pretty much good here. I think this is solid. Bishop to g4 could be good for black, but on h3, the engine is suggesting bishop takes f3. I'm not sure how good that is. I'd probably play like bishop d7, e6, knight c6, yeah, cool. In terms of moving this forward, I would say knight f6, e6 is a little bit passive, but it's generally, a fairly safe position for both sides. Even after this eval, this bishop h5 eval shift, I don't think this is particularly bad for black. I think it's just, I don't really think white has anything here. White ends up trading this knight for that bishop, and that offers some positional changes in evaluation. But here I think basically black is fine. So bishop h5 faces off against g4, and here, basically the advantage goes away entirely. So the idea was basically, the eval change was based on the idea that you trade off the bishop for the knight on f3. That didn't happen, so here, nothing too exciting. Queen b6 is a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, h3 g4 is not too bad, provided that you plan on castling queenside. If you castle queenside, then h3 g4, is not really a disruption to you in any way. Basically, it ends up being, it basically ends up being, it sort of advances an attack. It doesn't create any kingside weaknesses. Here, a plan going forward, if you're really interested in capturing the, capturing the advantage, g4, bishop g6, something like bishop to f4, knight to e4 maybe, queen I don't know, knight takes, bishop takes, queen d2, and you can castle queenside if you want. Or sorry, this hangs a piece. Fantastic. Queen e2, and then castling queenside I think should end up being pretty good for white. Yeah, queen to e2, and queen to b4. So overall, I think white's good. Both sides are fine. It's just it's a it's a game. It's basically not a a position where there's a whole lot going on. This eval shift is pretty aggressive. I don't know why the engine's being so solid about this one, but the idea behind it is h3 g4 bishop 8 g6 knight to e5. That's the edge. Rook b8 rook b8 makes sense. Putting your rook on an open file, I like this. Rook b8 facing off against b2. That makes sense to me. Bishop takes f3, pawn takes f3, castles, h4. And basically, black's in pretty good shape here. I think h6. So I want to see exactly where this sort of the initiative for white basically slipped away. I think from here it's about equal, but I think when I think this is the move. I think the big improvement here is queen to d3. You could also try g4. The engine is recommending g4, but just from an intuitive perspective, queen to d3 is a better way to handle this threat than queen to e1. With queen to d3, basically you have defense on this bishop on bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. So yeah, I guess I would definitely say you can improve here by playing queen to e3 as opposed to queen to e1. Queen to e1 will lead to this pawns getting doubled, but queen to d3 I think basically is a way to improve this and more safely. Here on bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and your pawn structure is fine. The big shift in eval comes when the pawns get doubled on the f file. So pawn takes bishop, and this king is exposed here. So knight e2 is how white, the engine is suggesting move this forward, but overall here I think that the eval is shifting away from black when basically the eval is shifting away from white and towards black as soon as the pawns get doubled. If the pieces just trade off completely here, white will have a vulnerable pawn structure in the endgame. a5, f4, pawn takes, bishop takes, rook b1, and here maybe I don't know, h6 is what the engine is suggesting. I might play queen a5. I mean, white's already got these doubled pawns. The only issue that could come up is if you, I guess here, now that I look at it, the thing that I would do in this situation even is play h6. Certainly h6 before h4, or certainly h6 after h4, but before h4, h6 is good because one of the only advantages of white's doubled pawns here is that it provides an open line for this rook to attack on g1 to g8. With h6, bishop takes h6, bishop takes h6. Basically, no kingside issues for black whatsoever. This is all completely fine. If you play but if you play the bishops away from there, like if you did what I initially thought was a good idea, queen a5, bishop takes, pawn takes, black's king safety is already, is also probably still fine. But the improvement is that, white can now use this g-file to attack. Black can also use this g-file to attack, but it becomes an overall more double-edged position. Here basically you have, here you have a situation in which only white has an exposed king. It's an interesting game. I want to go back. So bishop h5, I think the engine is overstating white's advantage here. I think basically, this is this is good for white with the idea of g4, knight e5 in mind. And even then, I feel like 2.3 pawns is generous. It's probably like 1.4 or 5 pawns. But it's early in the game, so sometimes these things are a little bit more rough. White's better, but the eval shifts once black can double these pawns on the f file. I feel like that's where the change in eval really was. Here, there's different ideas. h6 is an idea. Bishop takes c. H6 is a slight improvement tactically, but overall here, black is sort of, black has a big positional edge. Maybe, black is up a pawn and has some advantage here, but maybe like queen f5, queen c2. I still feel like this eval is overly generous to black, but this should be it should slowly be a win. The engine sees the win immediately, so it gives this huge eval, but yeah, black is able to close this out pretty comfortably. Kind of surprising, because I don't really feel like white made too many errors. The biggest errors in this game, I think, for white. So first, the biggest errors for black. I think that there's some inefficiencies here. After f4, I think h6 immediately is probably a good idea. Here there was a tactical improvement with h6, queen e3, okay, h takes. Basically any response that isn't bishop takes f6 here. So on bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, knight takes d5, c takes d5, and this ends up trading off into an endgame where black has an advantage. Black can play queen takes c4, and rook can take b4, but overall I think black's got a pretty solid position, just pawns up. Overall, pretty good game. I really want to find specific things to improve here. I want to see if I can find one solid thing for each side. So the first is queen d3 over queen e1. Queen d3 holds on to the knight but breaks the pin. It's an improvement in that respect. For black, bishop takes c3, I guess, is somewhat inefficient, but not really that bad. Other lines. I guess we can look into that bishop h5 move. Sure. Yeah, no, not at all. No judgment. Never. There never should be any judgment. I think it's basically, basically this, in this situation, it's, I'm having trouble finding obvious errors in this game. It's a pretty well played game. Queen d3 over queen e1 is the only one that I can think of, but. Yeah, I feel like black here, yeah, black plays a good game, to be honest. Let's look more into this bishop to h5 move, because that's really the only thing that, that's really the only big mistake that I see. I think running into this is probably good for white. Getting this knight for that bishop is probably good, and your king safety is not that compromised. You can already probably castle kingside, or you can castle kingside after bishop g2. Like, your king safety is not too terrible. But yeah, I guess it's trading off this knight for that bishop pair and getting a spatial advantage on the king side is really worth a lot. But you can see that the engine moved a lot towards a lot. It didn't end up being a 2.3 pawn advantage. It ended up being a 1.3 pawn advantage. So rook b8, queen c7, I guess. Queen c7, bishop d6. Yeah, overall, really solid play. How about does knight e4 do anything? Nope. Rook takes, knight e4. Yeah, that's a different way it could have been played. Here, queen takes d4 looks better to black for me. So there's a small advantage. Queen takes d4. You know, I figure if you're black here, you probably just want to, you know, you want to be careful, but you want to basically build up a big material lead. So queen takes d4, I think, is probably a good idea. And yeah, overall, I think black basically, black basically plays a very accurate game and capitalizes. I'm going to use the report to look for inaccuracies for black, but I don't really think there was very much. Just the open position where there was the ability to, the open position where there's the ability to get the knight traded for the bishop was probably an improvement, but yeah, makes sense. Yeah, solid game, really. What were these 3 mistakes? Yeah, these... Honestly, I feel like black just played pretty well. I don't have a ton to add there. The engine points towards trading the knight off for the bishop at the beginning, but yeah, looks pretty solid. Unless you guys find something that I'm obviously missing, it makes sense. The moves here all sort of make general sense to me, and black capitalizes on some good ideas. So I don't know. F5 and that bishop's about to be trapped on g4. That's good. Tricky game. H6 here, maybe. I don't know. A takes b4 is also fine, but h6 could be played. I don't know. Really good game, guys. Thank you very much for sending it in. I don't have much to add on that one. Maybe look at that you know, the consequences of that knight taking on g3, but really solidly played by black. Some slight inefficiencies maybe after the game was already decided, but overall a very good game. Thank you very much for sending it, Kathleen and Anch. Please keep sending them. Hopefully I can be more helpful. The big error in this game I see was the queen e1 as opposed to queen d3 for white, but overall everything else sort of made sense. It was a logically consistent game where basically black exploited a superior pawn structure. And once black got the superior pawn structure and won this pawn on b4, it was difficult for white to come up with much play. You guys are playing well. I don't have that much to add, to be honest. I would tell you if I did, but yeah, good playing by you guys. Thanks for sending the game. Thanks. You guys are playing well from what I can tell. Okay, here's Coach's game. Coach is playing white here, and he gave very good guidance on kind of what to he gave very good guidance on what to look for here. So he wanted to look at 23 f5, and he wanted to basically look for the knight, basically look for the middle game knight development and knight maneuvering here. So that's really helpful. It's good. I can look at exactly what he's interested in. This is basically an opening line where bishop b4 comes early, bishop d2 gets played, and yeah, white's developing. In terms of what's commonly played here, bishop d2 is played often. Bishop takes d2 is played less often. And then here, queen takes d2 is the main move for white. The advantages of queen takes d2 versus knight c3 or knight takes d2 is probably that you can play knight c3 later in this opening. If you play queen takes d2, you can develop the knight to c3 and get center control. If you if you play queen takes d2, the knight develops to its natural square. With knight takes d2, you don't really have the same ideas with the knight. Now the knight is mainly a supporting piece, supporting moves like e4, e4, d5, queen c2, but it's just not very challenging. It's not a challenging move for white to play. Queen takes, knight c3, white is good. So here I would say castles, knight c3, d5, e3, and queen e7, and basically white's got a pretty solid position. I'm thinking something like bishop d3, bishop c2, queen d3, threats on h7 look reasonable. White's got a good position here. D takes c4 I think is a little bit I think is probably a little bit not. I don't think that's the best idea. I think both sides here probably want to maintain the tension in the center. C takes d5 is often not a good move. Basically it ends up freeing the light squared black bishop, which can become an important thing in this opening. D takes c4 is also probably not the best idea, basically because having like a solid semi-Slav structure is good for black, and also because it kind of diminishes black's center control. Here, white has control of the center, and with d5 that white still probably had slightly better control of the center, but it was more ambiguous. So yeah, ideas. Knight d2 as opposed to queen takes d2, that was a difference. Now white might as well play g3, bishop g2, because basically the knight's or the c4 pawn is going to be there, or the knight's going to replace it. But bishop g2, g3, bishop g2 makes consistent sense. That's a reasonable place to develop the bishop. And now, with each succeeding move, the diagonal for that light squared bishop is going to get more solid. Knight e8, e4, knight d6, and basically here, this is good. Queen b1's an idea. Knight c4 is an idea. Knight c4 paired with bishop to e4 is an idea. So yeah, here I guess I would say threats on a8 are probably the strongest idea for black, or strongest idea for white. I think knight d6 and white's basically seeing an edge. I don't know what happens here exactly. Yeah, I mean, unless I'm missing something, you wanted to stop on move 23, f5. Coach, this is basically an advantage where you basically have a good position here. You could play queen f3, but I wouldn't get too stuck on things that make the eval go from 8 to 4. I would play queen f3 here. You definitely do need defense. The question was why is f5? F5 was definitely avoidable. Yeah, for sure. So I would, f5 is a good general thematic idea, but it's not calculated correctly. It was, thank you very much for sending these questions in, and I can do a more focused analysis, Coach. For sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. The main thing here is you've got a great game. This is looking good. I would play queen f3 and hold on to, basically hold control of this e3 knight. This is sort of a tactical thing. It's like, I don't know if it was that much of a problem. I think f5 makes sense in the thematic concept of attacking the king side here. But I think that the issue is you don't recognize that the knight is hanging. So I guess I would say this is just something that will go away with sufficient tactical training. Like if you do more and more tactics, you're going to have better and better chances of making sure that you don't make mistakes like that. Queen f3. is Queen f3 is a good move. Puts a lot of pressure on d5, puts pressure on a8, and defends it so you can play f5 comfortably the next move. It's just a recognizing the hanging piece basically. Puzzle battle in particular is really good for this. When you play puzzle battle, you start off with like 10 puzzles in a row. They're all kind of material hanging pieces like this. They're usually played from what would be the black perspective in this position. But they help you really recognize these types of positions. These things come up all the time, and it's just making sure that you don't make errors and miss the hanging pawns here is really the advantage for white. Queen f3, queen e3 is getting held, and basically threats on a8 I think are a good idea here. Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and white is in a good position. Even after f5, white is in a good position. But in terms of improving your game, this is just a tactical thing. There's no book or there's no coach that can really help you with this. This just needs to be, training in front of the computer, looking at positions similar to this, and with positions similar to this, you will get better and better at recognizing when that knight is hanging, and as a result, won't play f5. I don't not like f5. F5 makes sense. I think f5 makes plenty of sense on the next move. You play queen f3 and f5 the next move, and you get all this pressure on the king side. That's great. But here instead, you're really in, basically you're giving up a piece that you don't need to be giving up on. Queen f3 maybe, and you're fine. But yeah, overall, great idea, great playing. Really, good stuff, makes sense. What suggestions would I make? I guess, I don't know. Queen takes, so you develop the knight to c3 more naturally. This just goes also with the opening book. Queen takes is the more common response, but it's justified based on, bringing your knight to a more natural and more challenging square for black. I think you've got a good general game here. Definitely, I think a good time. You picked a good time to start moving an attack over to the white side, or to the black side. You have this discovered attack on a8, which is good. And now you're solid. Now you should have a sufficient material lead. So it ends in a good place. And the things that I would change, I would look at queen takes d2 instead of knight takes d2. That's a pretty small one. And then it really just comes down to a tactical error. At the end of the day, these are just tactical positions, and being extremely accurate tactically is necessary. To become an expert or master-rated player, you really just have to be very, very accurate. F4, F5 wasn't a killer here. You were already up and you were playing a great game, so it's not much of a problem. But here with F5, you're gonna have pressure on the, basically here with F5 you're in a good place. This is, even after F5 you're in a good place. But without playing it, with playing Queen F3, you're in a great place and about to win this game. So tactics. At the end of the day, call me coach. Thank you very much for sending in the game, and thank you very much for bringing this in on the stream. In terms of formulating an attack, I think what you did made a lot of sense. I mean, you basically moved that. Yeah, more is always good. Definitely more is always good. Every master has done thousands of hours of those. I promise you. It's a lot of puzzles. It's really you need your pattern recognition to be as good as possible. All masters do it, and that's the way that you move forward. It's just time. It's weightlifting. Just time spent on that stuff. But yeah, you have a good basically, you had a good game, and with a little bit more tactical precision, you wouldn't have had any of the eval shifts. You still won, and that's great. That's great. I'm glad you won, and good job, performing all the execution needed to win. But that ended up being. But F5 I think is a move that with enough tactics training you're definitely going to be able to improve upon. So yeah, thank you very much for sending that in, Call Me Coach, Right, right, yeah, no, and thank you for giving me that to focus on. Yeah, sometimes there isn't really a decisive attack. It becomes less necessary if you know, basically at a Grandmaster level, right? There are rarely decisive attacks. You know, many Grandmaster games come down to like the winning of a pawn, and you know the person who wins the pawn advances their position and wins by a pawn in the end game. So yeah, a lot of games don't have mating attacks. The important thing is that you play solidly and you improve your pieces and you make sound, purposeful moves. But yeah, not every game ends in checkmate. A lot of them just sort of, you know, one side wins a pawn, the thing goes to an endgame, and you win in the endgame. You know, those are less exciting games probably, but many games end that way. Here, white is up. White is not. White materials equal, but white has the initiative. White will probably be able to turn this initiative into winning a pawn, but yeah, the mate may just not be possible. The important thing is just keep improving your pieces, make trades that make sense, make purposeful moves, and you know, attacks are methods to create a winning position. If you can create a winning position without you know, forming an enormous attack, by all means do that as well. But yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much for sending that game, Call Me Coach, and please, yeah, please keep sending them. Super interesting. I hope that's helpful. And yeah, no, tactics. It's just you know, it's just such a determining factor at club level. So yeah, good game, Coach. Good win, and good stuff. All right, 2 more games. Thank you very much for sending it. We have Smiggy's game, and we have one other one. Okay, Smiggy's playing this game as white. All right. Knight f3, bishop f5, cool. This overall looks good. London system, I think, is a good way to play this. I don't know if they call this the London system. Maybe they call it something else. Yeah, accelerated London system. Okay. E3, cool. Getting ready to develop the bishop. Knight a3, e6, c3, bishop, knight c6, and overall here, you know, I think white's got a pretty good position. You've kind of stepped out of mainline opening theory, but yeah, no problems here for white. Queen b3 is probably best, but whatever, it's fine. Good. Okay. So here you run into some difficulties. Queen takes f3 hangs a piece. This is a tactical concern. Knight takes or bishop takes is better. But h3, queen takes h3, and now black's gonna win a piece. So I think probably queen to g3 might be the best. But you're kind of playing in a situation where you've got more difficulties than are ideal here. This was a good idea, good counter tactic. But pawn takes d3, queen takes g7, queen f6 refutes this for black. So tricky. Good counter, good idea, good general idea. You know, basically coming up with a counter attack to counter the thing, or counter your opponent's attack that's inevitable. But this ends up being pretty good for white. Or this would end up being pretty good for black given best play. It ends up being pretty good for white. Now you're pretty close to equality. Maybe bishop g3. King c2 I like. King d2 I also like. And yeah, I feel like white's position just sort of makes sense. You know, white gets the mate. Okay, cool. So places where white could have improved. You know, you won this game, so probably naturally less places to improve. Knight a3 is correct. You know, don't be afraid to, if you're getting threatened like this by an aggressive knight on the b5 on the 4th rank. Don't be afraid to play moves like knight a3. Knight takes, bishop takes, and overall here, yeah, I like White's general position. E5 and queen. I mean, maybe you can try. I don't know. I was wondering if there is a better way here, but bishop h2, queen g3, and now White's you know, White's basically in pretty good you know, in basically pretty good situation. It was an error here, because Black won this piece. You know, he moved the bishop back. Now with e4, either the queen or the bishop should be won. But basically, you bluffed bluffed Black out of allowing queen g7. And as a result, after g6, which is a blunder, White saves both of his pieces from the fork on e4 and ends up in a good place. Hey, welcome back, Electric Horse. Thank you very much for joining the stream. So f3 is good. King takes. I think, was it Electric Horse who was proposing I do beginner lessons now? I like that idea, though. Whoever said it.
I think that was me.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I know the horsey makes an L, and that's
yeah. But yeah, that good call on that. So yeah, I like it. I like that idea. But yeah, White converts this very well. Errors for White, pretty limited. You know, Black sort of attacked and over-attacked in such a way that you didn't really have too much to improve on. Knight takes, fine. And this, you know, basically, the only error here was one that was a few moves in. This is literally, I think, the only error in this game for White. It all made sense other than this. Was just, you have to play g takes here. The issue with queen takes is that it allows this e pawn to advance twice with tactical wins. So on e5, you play bishop to h2, and yeah, I think everything's pretty much good. Bishop to e5 here. This is good. Good for White. Yeah. Thanks, Electric. Yeah. But this is the error. G takes and not queen takes. G takes here. That was it. This is the move. Queen takes hangs the piece immediately to exactly what Black did. So good job. You know, basically getting out of that issue with the queen g3 with the queen g7 threat. But in terms of improving this game, I think it's just a tactical consideration. G takes f3, queen takes f3, and the piece gets hung. Other than that, I think you convert this fairly well. There's some middle game complexity here. You know, maybe you play like, yeah, rook f1 makes sense. F3 here after the king's on d2. I think this is the right way of going about things. But you're up a piece, you know, after this. So overall, well, yeah. Yeah, you're up. I don't understand knight takes e3. Your advantage increases by a lot there. Yeah, it was a great bluff, to be honest. You know, totally. That was awesome. So yeah, I think good. Yeah, good idea. That queen g3. It really was a very good practical move here. Yep. Good call. Black saw queen takes g7 and got too scared to play pawn takes d3, which is objectively the best move. So, good call, good stuff. And yeah, win for White. Nice. Yeah, I don't get knight takes e3 to be completely honest for Black, but other than that, it makes sense. Strong game, and thank you very much for sending it. On to the last game of the day. Or last game of the morning, sorry. This is Matt Yop's game. Thank you very much for sending it in, Matt Yop. cool. Matt Yop is playing black. We'll take it from his perspective. And here's a move that I think you can improve in the opening. Moving the knight in front of the c pawn in a queen's pawn game is not basically is not really that great. You want to probably play c6 or c5. If you block the knight's natural or if you block the pawn's natural advancement, white can play c4 and you can't effectively counter with anything except for e6. Basically limits your options. If you play c6, then I think you're in a better place here. This is good. So yeah, go with this, I think. Be prepared to play knight d7. That's the more common move in a queen's pawn opening. I think that's more generally sound. But by this point, you're really in great shape. Your opponent misses the fact that the knight is hanging. You play knight takes d5, and then win. Yeah. So. Yeah, of course. No, thank you very much, Gimme Code. Yeah, thank you very much for offering. Yeah, please send a game in for a review. Here, where I would say is join the Discord. That's probably the best place to send me stuff. If you go to the Discord is here. And, yeah, this is the Discord, right? So definitely don't play knight c6. Play what you're most comfortable with. But knight c6 gets this pawn stuck. What to do instead? I think this seemed to work. And I think black is winning by a lot here. Queen takes d2. I don't think is correct. And then I think even after this, I think knight takes d1. So really, I'm gonna kind of aim you towards a tactical play here. I think you can really benefit a lot from I think you can gain a lot basically from streamlining your play. Basically, like I think with better tactical play, you can win this game much more easily. So the places where I think better tactical play might be helpful. I think knight c6 in front of the c pawn is gets the c pawn stuck. I think that this was a good tactical find. The knight on d5 was hanging. And then here you have the opportunity to take the queen, but you don't. So knight takes d1 was the basically the move here that would have improved your position the most. So knight takes d1 is a good play. Knight takes d1 and then king takes d1. That makes more that makes more sense to me, and I think gives black a better position. So here yeah, great job recovering the queen. Here I think you've got a good play. You probably just want to trade off the rook here. If you can trade off the rook on d8, you're going to be in a good position. And overall, I think it's interesting. But the way to maximize, I guess, is probably just to I guess I would just say this. This game has a lot of volatility. Let's take a look at the report. Interesting. Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, let's look at the game report. With good tactical study, I think you can cut out a lot of these issues. You can cut out, basically this swing of 6 points and this swing of 10 or so points. Yeah, the end goal of the game is to have a grandmaster, what grandmaster games look like, which is basically these kind of small increments here, and then it moves to one side and generally stays there. That's what it looks like with tactical precision. So I would recommend that, Matt Yop. I think you have a lot of interest and you have a lot of potential to improve your game with tactical play. I think you're doing a lot of things right. But yeah, I guess I would just say the chess tactics workbook I liked a lot. I found this one to be very helpful. But there's other ones too, just general tactics, chesstempo.com, that kind of thing. And I think those will really move you in the correct direction, Matt Yop, for sure. So thank you very much for sending the game in. Please keep sending them in. And yeah, I think your best route forward is really to just do a lot of tactical study. I think that's how you do it. I think that will move things forward. And yeah, good work. Thank you very much for sending it in. And yeah, good job. Capitalizing on the tactics that got you into a strong positive eval. So yeah, thank you very much for sending the game, Matt Yop. Please keep sending them. And yeah, please. Yeah, I mean they're interesting, and I highly recommend studying some tactics. I think that's the best way to move forward with your game. So thanks all for being here. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch the stream. And the next stream is tonight at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Looking forward to it. Everybody, study your tactics, and I hope to see you tonight. Thanks for making the time. I'll talk to you later. Bye.